Hello, I'm Mark Orton, creator of American Delusions. This is episode 2, the Trump pandemic. Today we're going to talk about Trump, the Republican Party, and the pandemic. When the coronavirus pandemic first came to the U.S. in late January 2020, it was an act of nature. No one was to blame. We started out on the right foot with a mass stay-at-home campaign, but then the president, the rest of his administration, and many other Republicans refused to follow the science. No national policy followed, accepting that the states were on their own. Trump and the Republicans paraded around without masks and did not practice social distancing. Trump made jokes about slowing down testing. Testing and tracing has only achieved scale in a few states, and lots of states, now suffering the consequences, opened up bars, restaurants, and allowed or encouraged large group events. There have been numerous super spreader cases resulting from bars, parties, beaches, funerals, religious services, block parties. Proof of the effectiveness of masks alone can be found in the infection rates from the large social protests of the past months. For the most part, protesters wore masks, and even without the social distances practices being followed, there have been no reports of outbreaks of the virus amongst the participants. It is absolutely clear that Trump and Republicans are to blame for the state we are in. This chart from the end of June shows U.S. performance in controlling the virus compared to the 10 most affected countries. The upward trend for us has only continued since then. Trump and Republicans can talk all they want about the Wuhan virus and other racist slurs. There is no other explanation for the tremendous surge in COVID-19 cases across the U.S. It is their policies that have created this monster. There has been no coherent federal policy to drive an effective response to this pandemic. The states have been thrown into the fray without adequate support. Instead, we have heard lots of propaganda from Trump and the Republicans and out-and-out lies and misdirection. The policies required to deal with the pandemic have been well known for months and months. Many countries in the developed world, and in fact everywhere around the world, have demonstrated how to implement the correct policies. The results speak for themselves. The policies can be summed up as mass stay-at-home campaign to flatten the infection curve, social distancing and face masks, testing and more testing, and then trace the contacts of new cases as they arise and quarantine those affected and exposed. China, Taiwan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and the European Union countries, amongst others, have demonstrated the effectiveness of these policies. Meanwhile, the U.S., with just 4.25% of the world's population, already accounts for more than 26%. That's 1 in 4 of worldwide deaths due to the coronavirus. And this slide shows the U.S. compared to the European Union. And it's no wonder Europe doesn't want us to visit. Trump and the Republicans are now spreading the pandemic. The pandemic in the U.S. is now entirely the responsibility of Trump and the Republicans. With exceptions that can be counted on your fingers of one hand, or maybe two at the most, the entire Republican Party continues to support policies that encourage the pandemic to spread and more people to die. The pandemic is now Trump's pandemic. Thanks for watching this episode of American Delusions. And you can always find more about these topics at American Delusions.